personal identity. There are multiple ways that people constitute their identities. If someone asked you what were the most important aspects of your identity, what would you say? Being a woman is really important to me. I think it's very hard to be a woman in this world, and I identify with it really strongly. Also being Black, it's something that's newly more important to me than it has been in the past. Which groups and subcultures do you see as the most important sources of support and identification for you? You know, the people who have been the biggest support to me is the disabled community, actually. When I had bipolar, well, I still have bipolar, but when it was bothering me, I really found support in like bipolar support groups and stuff. What identities and groups arouse in the greatest feelings of fear, curiosity, shame, or envy? Being Black arouses a lot of curiosity in me, and I'm curious about my past and my bloodline and what's happened to people who came before me. And I kind of envy some of my family members for having like darker skin and being able to like identify more strongly with that culture. Some of the categories of identity we will be exploring in this class include race, ethnicity, class, gender identification, sexual orientation, age, ability, religion, and national identity. Please describe your understanding of your membership in and affiliation with the categories above, with the above categories of identity. Well, I am mixed, Black and white. I'm pretty poor. I identify as female, and I'm queer, I guess you could say, pansexual. My age is 38. I am definitely disabled. I am completely agnostic, and I'm an American. How often do you think about these identities, and what do you think? I don't think a lot about a lot of these identities, really. I have thought about being Black a lot more since starting my Access class and doing all of that. And I think about disability a lot because it holds me back and I have to take a lot of pills and stuff. Age, I guess, holds me back because, you know, the younger you are, the more energy you have to go do stuff. How often do you think, which identities are a source of pride for you and why? I'm proud to be a queer woman, and I think because it's really important to be proud of your sexual identity because people make it so difficult and you have to kind of take a stand for where you stand. Which identities are a source of discomfort for you and why? I definitely don't feel Black enough sometimes. Which aspect of identity do you struggle with the most and why? I would have to say I struggle with my disability. It can be really hard. My back hurts really badly sometimes, and just taking pills constantly is just so annoying, and having ADHD is such a battle. Race, ethnic identity. When were you first aware of yourself as a member of a particular racial or ethnic group? I really learned about this since I was like a kid forever growing up. My mom was like, you're Black, be proud of it, like you're mixed, you know. When were you first aware of people from race ethnicities other than the race ethnicities which you identify? Probably as soon as I moved to Hawaii, around like when I was 6. There are lots of people that are different races and ethnicities there, and I was mixing in with them real quickly. When was the first time you experienced the effects of racism? Okay, I probably don't remember the first time I experienced the effects of racism. I remember the first time someone called me a haole, but I was like a teenager already, and I was unimpressed. Who and what were the most important influences on your understanding of your racial and ethnic identity? Probably my mom, because she really told me and instilled in me to be proud of like who I was and to be proud of being Black. She would like buy me books on like Black history and try to get me to read them. Which racial or ethnic group do you feel you understand the least? That's kind of tough. I guess like I've got like so much experience with so many different ethnic groups. I'd have to say like people from like Iceland or something. Like I just don't know them very well. How has racism influenced your ability to trust and be trusted by others and to form friendships and other relationships? It hasn't. I really don't think that it has. What topics do you avoid discussing because you fear you will appear racist? Probably just bad jokes that are in poor taste that I just like I can think of, but I would probably never say because they're rude. Have you ever felt you needed to master the spoken and unspoken cultural norms or a particular racial ethnic group to which you did not belong in order to justify? Yes. In Hawaii, I felt like I wanted to, you needed to fit in with certain cultural norms to be able to get along well, and I really wasn't able to assimilate that well into it. Have you ever, how has racism impacted your ability to move culturally and geographically around the place you live? It hasn't really. I don't let anything like that stop me in any way. In what ways has racism affected your life and the lives of those with whom you are close? Well, I'm sure it's affected my father. He's Black and he's probably had to deal with a lot of racism in his life. And I can't think of any concrete ways that racism has affected my life. I've never had like anyone be directly like confrontationally racist to me. Just jerks on the internet and like, yeah, weird old guys. What is your understanding of the difference between biological sex and gender identity? Biological sex is like the what you are when you're born, like what kind of genitals you have, and what kind of like XY markers you have. And gender identity is how you want to present yourself as a male or female or neither or both. When was the first time you were aware boys and girls were treated differently because of their sex? What happened? How do you define masculinity and femininity? What aspects of these categories are most attractive to you and what are the most threatening? The toys at McDonald's were the first time I was aware that boys and girls had differences, and I always would ask my dad to get me the boys toys and to ask specifically because they always seemed to know I was a girl and give me the girl toys and I wanted the boy toys. I think that there shouldn't be really hard definitions on masculinity and femininity. I try to keep those definitions really loose because I don't feel like you should tell someone how to be a man or how to be a woman. Like I'm not the one to define that. What aspects of these categories are attractive to you? Men and muscles. I like men, and I like what's the word? Chivalry and that kind of stuff. but they can also be scary, and like the testosterone and like anger that men can exhibit can be scary. Girls are great. Femininity is great because girls are so loving and caring, and like I think like I love women. How did you learn to become the gender identity you have chosen to inhabit? Has there been a shift in your gender identity in the course of your life, and if so, what has shifted? Nothing has shifted whatsoever in the course of my life. I had to learn like makeup and hair. It's messy, but on my own, but I was always solidly identifying as a woman. Have you ever been asked to identify whether you were a boy or girl as a child, as an adult? Nope, I have not. Have you ever been perceived as of the gender with which you do not identify? No. Were you ever told that if you went out alone after dark, you'd be raped? If yes, what was the implied identity of the rapist? Yeah, that's probably a legit concern. Like, and the implied identity is that it is a male. How do you express your gender identity, and are there aspects of your gender identity that you would like to change? I like to do my hair, and I like to do my makeup, and I like to dress up fun. I like to compliment people and really be loving and give gifts to people. And I guess if I don't think there's much of my gender identity I would like to change, because if there was, I would just change it. Sexual orientation and expression. What did you learn about straight heterosexuality and other forms of sexual expression when you were a kid, when you were in college, now? What did I learn about it? I learned just the basics, I guess. Most people were straight, but my mom was pretty like straightforward about there being gay people too. Now they have that joke like, are the straights okay? And sometimes I wonder, kidding. But yeah, I guess it's the default. It is the default like sexual identity, and that's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. What do you remember learning about people who were not heterosexual when you were a child, and from what source did you learn this information? If you're straight, how did this information influence your ability to question your sexual orientation? If you identify as gay, trans, or queer, how did this influence your coming out? I have the worst memory, so this is very difficult exercise for me. But I remember just always knowing that there were gay people, and from my mom and my dad and the people around me weren't sugarcoating anything for me or hiding anything from me. So they made it seem as if it were normal, and that's because it is normal. And I think they have the right take on that. It gave me I always knew that I could be whatever sexual orientation I wanted to be. I used to tell my dad I wish I was gay just to get under his skin, because it might a little, but not really. But yeah, I've never had to worry about whether or not I could express my sexual identity. That's nice. If you've ever acknowledged a sexual attraction to a person of the gender with which you identify, what did that acknowledgement do to your understanding of your sexual orientation? I have thought forever that I was straight, but I have always thought that other women were absolutely gorgeous and very attractive. I always thought it was kind of weird that I wasn't any kind of like bisexual or anything, because I find women very, very beautiful. And then I kind of realized that I was bi, pansexual, queer, whatever. What do we gain and lose as a dominant culture by partitioning sexual orientation into categories of being and identity? what do we gain from it? Like, I guess we gain the labels, which it can be helpful. Labels are kind of necessary sometimes, but they can also be like more than a double-edged sword. They can be really confining as well. We lose the ability for people to truly express themselves on a spectrum. Have you ever modified your dress to signify your sexual orientation? Have you ever experimented with dressing in a way that challenges your sexual orientation? I mean, I've dressed like for the male gaze before, I suppose you could say. So yeah, I could say yes, I probably have like modified my dress to show off something. Ability. What do you remember about your first encounter with your own or others' disabilities? What feelings or thoughts did you have? It was painful when I first hurt my back, and it was painful when I first became bipolar, and I didn't really understand what was happening to me. That was really difficult. How do you define disability? What medical and physical conditions do you exclude from the category of disability and why? I define disability as anyone who has like a disease or a disorder that holds them back from being able to do like regular everyday tasks. And I don't think that I would exclude any or include any particularly. I think that is more of an individual thing. What has shifted in your understanding and conception of disabilities as you've aged? I've realized how they can blindside you when you not see them coming. What assumptions about independence, cognition, sexuality, and pain do you hold about individuals with disabilities? I wonder if I assume that sexuality and being sexual is difficult if you have certain disabilities, but everyone has needs, and I think when it comes to pain, we should be really cognizant of people with disabilities, because it can be really hard to try and live a normal life when your body is just screaming at you. I think independence should be fostered, and we should try to like form more social programs to help people live independent lives. I mean, it's kind of the dream. If you do not identify as someone with a physical disability, are you aware of whether your dwelling, workplace, and school are accessible to people with physical disabilities? If you identify as having a physical disability, how much of your time is devoted to advocating for yourself and teaching others to be aware of your disability? I think that the school is probably really disability friendly. I see like the stalls and the wide doorways and stuff. What would you change if you altered your conception of disability from that of a medical condition to instead a social construct? I don't know. I think it would make me take them like less seriously. Like a social construct is not something that's like made up. Socioeconomic class. How and when did you become aware of your class status? How did you feel about your class status? Oh, from the time we were growing up, I was on food stamps and HUD and Section 8 and all that. So pretty much right away. We lived in a tent when I was little for a short amount of time. What advantage, if anything, if any, have you gained from your class status? There has been one sole advantage, and that has been that my college has been pretty well covered. Everything else about being in the bottom class has sucked, but I've been able to go to school and probably get a bachelor's degree because of it, and I appreciate that. How would you define the term middle class? What salary range would you attribute to middle class standing? Oh, see, my understanding of what, like, what is, I have no idea what is good, a lot of money or not. I feel like anything above $75,000 to like $150,000 is like middle class standing. What's the difference between class status and money? Well, class status is something you're able to hold and maintain and is generational, goes through your family. Money is just more transient by nature. What images arise in your mind when you think of the term poverty? How can you tell if someone is poor? How can you tell if someone is rich? What images arise in your mind when you think of the term rich? When I think of the term poverty, I think of like people in other countries who are living in like grass huts and really struggling to like eat, and I also picture people here struggling to eat or people outside during the cold. When I think about rich people, I think about nice houses, like nice types of architecture, like Frank Lloyd Wright stuff, and nice cars and pools, and just being able to buy like whatever you want, like being able to do Uber Eats whenever you want and stuff like that. If I had enough money, this question, if I had enough money, I would start a nonprofit organization to help people connect to mental health services. I think that would probably be the best thing ever. Next page. People with money are not sharing enough of it. What do we gain and lose in the U.S. by arguing that everyone, regardless of class origins, has the opportunity to become a successful and move up the economical ladder? We gain the impression that we have the American dream, but we lose the opportunity to help people actually move up because we assume that it's super easy. All you got to do is just, put in the hard work and you'll get there. And that's literally not the case for everyone. Do you identify with those in your class bracket or with those above or below you? I would say I identify with my class bracket. Yes. Age. What are your first memories of someone you considered elderly? What kind of relationship did you have with them? The only person I've really known that was like elderly and was around was just a neighbor I had. We had a neighborly relationship. She would get mad at me for playing my music too loud. Have you ever felt aspects of your personality or interests don't fit the numerical age you were at the time? How does this dissonance affect you? Well, there was times where I was like really into like the cat eyes and like the pinup clothes, and I collect cosmetics from the like 50s and 60s and that still have the makeup in them, and like Avon bottles. So some of my interests aren't like in this era, but it doesn't really affect me in any kind of way except for I lose money by like buying stuff. Would you be comfortable having a boss that was younger than you? Yeah, as long as they know what they're doing. What is the appropriate age range between members of a romantic couple? How far apart is too far apart? I don't think older people should be dating people whose frontal lobes have not developed. So I think once you're 25, just go crazy. Date whoever you want. Like, your brain's developed. You can make decisions like that are completely solid. And it's not that like people can't, but they're more vulnerable. They're more vulnerable to being taken advantage of. What are the differences between who older men and older women are perceived in the dominant white U.S. culture, in the culture with which you identify? I guess I identify with I identify with no culture, so that's kind of hard. Yeah, older men are perceived as like more swarthy. No, I think I used that word wrong. They're more, like silver foxes. and older women, or you're not supposed to age. You're not supposed to be an older woman. What will you lose as you age? Stupidity, hopefully. What will you gain? I hope I gain a lot of wisdom and good memories. When was the last time you talked about race, class, ability, sexual orientation, or gender? When and where did that occur? What did you say? What did you wish you had said? How frequently do you discuss these issues? I probably have had conversations about class within the last 48 hours. I think that we had, it was me and my boyfriend talking, and we basically think that, billionaires shouldn't exist, and they should pay down in taxes till they're not billionaires anymore. It probably comes up a lot because of the issues that we're dealing with in the world right now. Have you experienced internalized oppression? In what ways does it show up for you? Yes, I probably police myself and how I feel about my blackness, and I feel like I am not black enough. And that's, I guess, how it shows up. Have you ever been a member of a political coalition of diverse groups? What happened? How did it feel? No, I haven't. Have you ever organized against social injustice? I can't say that I have. How do you define power? People who have control over other people. Have you ever worked in an organization or been in a community that was entirely led by people of color? No, I haven't. Have you ever been the only representative of an identity group or in a social group or organization? What did that feel like? Yes, I've been the only mixed person and the only person of color in many situations, the only black person in many situations, and it does not feel very comfortable, I guess. I feel out of place. What feelings arose in you during this interview? I guess I feel stupid. I just feel like I don't have intelligent enough takes on any of this. What topics or questions made you uneasy? Probably topics where I have to name someone as inappropriate or be like, men do this and they can be unsafe, and it's hard to want to point fingers. What topics increased your curiosity? That's pretty much all interesting. I think that talking about disability is probably the easiest for me, and I find socioeconomic class the most interesting. What is the relevance of this interview to your practice as a social worker? Because self-reflection is really, really important, and it really helps you to be able to do anything. Self-reflection is one of the most important qualities you can have. Have you talked about this assignment with anyone who isn't in social work? What was their response to this assignment? Yeah, I mentioned it to my friends, and they just said it was a lot of questions, and that was it. Yeah, that's my interview.